I was standing at my kitchen counter in Seattle, scrolling through a restaurant's holiday menu on my phone, trying to lock in a simple dinner reservation for the week after Thanksgiving. The kettle had just started to hiss. Rain tapped lightly against the window. It was ordinary enough that I almost missed the message when it came in. "Sweetheart, your dad and I think it's best if you skip Thanksgiving this year. We're keeping it small with Gavin and his family. You understand, right?" I read it twice. Not because it was confusing, but because it landed the way familiar things land. Quietly. Predictably. I felt my face stay neutral. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. On the corner of my table, a FedEx envelope sat unopened, the one stamped with a bold red label that said, "Original Documents." I didn't touch it yet. Instead, I typed back with steady fingers. "Okay, Mom. Have a peaceful holiday." Then I turned the burner off under the kettle and let the kitchen go silent. My name is Erin, and I'm 38. I've learned what it feels like to be treated like background noise in your own family. Gavin is 2 years older than I am, and he's always been the center of the frame. He has the polished finance job, the wife who remembers everyone's birthdays, and 2 kids who show up in matching outfits in every photo. When he posts anything online, my mother comments within minutes. When Gavin got promoted last year, my parents drove 3 hours to take them all to dinner. My father made a toast. My mother cried. They sent me pictures from the restaurant like it was a public event I should be proud to watch from a distance. Last spring, when I opened my own small architecture studio, I invited them to the ribbon cutting. I'd spent weeks on the details. Fresh paint, clean signage, a simple table with coffee and pastries. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since my first licensing exam. My mom hugged me, looked around for less than a minute, and said, "That's nice, honey." Then she asked if I'd heard Gavin might be looking at a bigger house because the kids needed more space. I didn't argue. I stopped trying to explain what it takes to build something from scratch. The late nights, the client meetings that stretch past dinner, the permit setbacks, the careful math behind every decision. I just nodded and kept moving. So when my mom told me to skip Thanksgiving, it didn't shock me. It clarified something I had already been living with. I set my phone down face up, watched it for a moment, and waited for the second message. There's usually a second message. A softener, a justification, a little extra wording to make it sound reasonable. It didn't come. I walked to the table and sat, the chair legs making a dull scrape on the floor. The envelope was thick and heavy, the kind that doesn't bend. My name was printed on the label in block letters. Under it, the sender line read a title I hadn't shared with anyone in my immediate family: Island Escrow Services. I ran my finger along the sealed edge, feeling the raised strip of adhesive. My hands didn't shake. If anything, I felt calm in the way you feel when a decision has already been made somewhere deeper than your thoughts. 4 months earlier, I had signed the final closing papers on an oceanfront property on Kauai. Not a vacation rental, not a timeshare, a real home with an infinity pool, a wide stone terrace, and a line of palms that caught the wind like they were listening. I'd worked years to afford it, quietly, methodically. I didn't bring it up at family dinners. I didn't mention it on calls. I didn't hint. I knew what would happen if I told my parents. They would find a way to make it about Gavin, or they would treat it like a risk, a phase, something I should have asked permission for. And I was done asking permission. The people who did show up for me weren't my parents. They were the ones who noticed when I was tired and didn't pretend not to. My Aunt Tessa, who mailed me care packages in grad school when my mom forgot I was studying for finals. My Uncle Ray, who flew in for my studio opening because, as he put it, someone should clap when you build something. My cousins who texted me every time my work showed up in a local magazine, even if it was just a small feature. They didn't need convincing when I said I wanted to host Thanksgiving somewhere warm. They asked what they could bring. I picked my phone back up and opened our extended family group chat. My thumb rested over the message field. The rain kept tapping the glass. The kettle sat quiet now, cooling on the stove. I wrote one line, kept it simple, and pressed send. Thanksgiving at my place in Hawaii this year. I'll share details tonight. I watched the screen for the first reply to appear. The replies came in the way good news always does, quickly and without hesitation. Aunt Tessa was first, already checking flights, then my cousin Nolan. If you say ocean, I'm in. Then another cousin, then an uncle, then a string of laughing emojis that didn't feel forced. Within 10 minutes, the group chat had the energy of a kitchen that's already warm, even before you start cooking. I didn't answer right away. I let it move on its own while I got my tea and walked to the window. The rain in Seattle had gone from steady to soft. The streetlights were on early. People passed by in jackets with their shoulders slightly hunched, the usual late fall rhythm. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mom. Maybe you can join us for Christmas instead, if Gavin's schedule permits. I read it once and didn't react. The words were so familiar they almost sounded like a template. My presence was always treated like an add-on, optional, conditional. I set the phone down and didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the travel spreadsheet I'd been building for weeks. It wasn't glamorous. It was just organized. Names, arrival times, dietary notes, room assignments, activities, backups. The kind of planning I've always been good at, because when you build things for a living, you learn that details are what make something feel solid. I had already spoken to the estate manager in Kauai twice. Her name was Marisol. Her voice was calm and practical. She didn't oversell anything. She just asked questions and wrote answers down. How many adults? How many kids? Any mobility issues? Any seafood allergies? Who wanted quiet mornings? Who wanted full days? Whether we preferred a plated meal or a long shared table with family-style serving? I told her I wanted it to feel easy, not luxurious in a showy way, just cared for. We scheduled staff in a way that wouldn't feel like staff. Housekeeping early, before people woke up, grocery deliveries timed to the hour, someone to manage towels and sunscreen and the endless trail of wet footprints kids leave behind. A private chef for Thanksgiving Day, but only because I wanted everyone to relax and actually enjoy the meal. I didn't want Aunt Tessa stuck at a stove out of habit. If I'm honest, I wanted it to feel like the opposite of the holidays I grew up with. At my parents' house, holidays were controlled. Not warm, not chaotic, not alive. Controlled. My father would sit in his usual chair and keep the television low, like noise was a threat. My mother would treat the day like a performance, making sure everything looked correct, then getting irritated when the kids acted like kids. Gavin's family would arrive late, and no one would say anything about it. Gavin would bring a dessert that looked expensive. My mother would compliment it like it was a contribution to world peace, and I would help clean up afterward because that's what I did. I was always useful, always available. It was my role. This year, I didn't want a role. I wanted a table where I could sit down. The group chat kept growing. Aunt Tessa. 2 bedrooms for me and Ray. We'll arrive early if you need help. Cousin Nolan. I'll take the kids snorkeling. I've got gear. Cousin Priya. Cooking class on the beach? Please tell me that's real. Uncle Ray. If there's a boat, I'm on it. I smiled once, small and private, and started answering in short bursts. Yes, real. I'll send a schedule tonight. No one needs to bring anything. Just get there. By the end of the evening, 21 people had committed. By the next morning, it was 24. Families move fast when they're excited, and it wasn't lost on me how little convincing it took. Nobody asked, "Are you sure?" Nobody hinted that it was too much. They trusted me. I closed the laptop and finally opened the FedEx envelope. Inside were copies of the finalized closing documents, the kind you keep for your own records even if you never show them to anyone. My name on the deed, the address, the signatures, dates, stamps, lines of legal language that boiled down to one clear fact. I owned the place. I slid the papers back into the envelope and put it in a drawer, not hidden like a secret, just stored like a file. Then I made a second list, separate from the travel plan. Step 1, finalize rooms. Step 2, lock activities. Step 3, hire a photographer. That last one mattered more than I admitted to myself at first. Not because I wanted to show off. I didn't. I just wanted proof. Not for my parents, exactly. For me. I wanted to capture a holiday where I wasn't waiting for someone to notice me, where laughter didn't feel earned, where I wasn't a spare chair at the edge of someone else's table. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called. I didn't answer immediately. I watched the phone vibrate on the counter while I rinsed a mug. Then I picked up, kept my voice even. "Hey, Mom." Her tone was soft in the way it gets when she's about to frame something as reasonable. "Erin, honey, I hope you're not too upset about Thursday. It's just, Gavin's kids have been so cranky, and you know how your father hates chaos." I leaned my hip against the counter, looking at the rain-wet alley behind my building. "Don't worry about me." A pause. I could hear her thinking, adjusting. "Oh, do you have plans with friends?" It was the kind of question that always sounded surprised, like she was trying to picture me as a person with a life that didn't orbit her. "Something like that," I said. "Well, you're not working through Thanksgiving, are you?" she asked, sharper now. "You know how we feel about that?" I could have said a lot. I could have corrected her. I could have told her I'd been working through holidays for years, just not in ways she noticed. Instead, I kept it simple. "I need to run. I've got arrangements to finalize." "Arrangements," she repeated, suspicious now. "What arrangements?" I glanced at my laptop, open on the table, the itinerary visible on the screen. Flight numbers, arrival times. A note that said, Marisol, confirm chef schedule. Another note, photographer arrival 10:30 a.m. Thanksgiving Day. I didn't answer her question. "I'll call you later," I said, and before she could push, I ended the call. Then I sat down at the table, opened the itinerary, and started confirming the last details, one line at a time. By the time the week arrived, the plan was no longer a plan. It was a schedule, printed and clipped to a folder like any other project I'd managed. I took 2 days off work, not because I needed rest, but because I wanted space to move through the final steps without rushing. My studio had been steady. The current build in Bellevue was on track, permits approved, vendor timelines locked. I'd arranged it so nothing would be hanging over my head while I was away. That felt important. I packed without overthinking. Neutral clothes, sandals, a light jacket for evenings by the water. The folder with the itinerary went into my carry-on. The FedEx envelope stayed in the drawer at home. I didn't need it with me. The property didn't stop being mine because I wasn't holding the papers. When I landed on Kauai, the air felt soft and warm, like the island was exhaling. Outside the airport, everything moved slower. Even the cars seemed calmer. Marisol met me at the estate gate an hour later. She wasn't dressed like someone in hospitality in the way people imagine it. No stiff uniform, just clean, practical clothes, a tablet in her hand, hair pulled back. She shook my hand like we were partners, not customer and staff. "Welcome back, Erin," she said. "We're ready." We walked the property together with the same kind of attention I bring to site visits. Not in an anxious way, in a thorough way. The terrace was cleaned and set, outdoor fans tested, lighting checked. The kitchen had fresh supplies organized by meal. The guest suites were stocked with sunscreen, water bottles, and small baskets for keys and jewelry. The little details people forget until they need them. Marisol pointed to a clipboard near the pantry. "Chef's schedule is here. Activities are confirmed. The Catamaran Company sent updated waivers. Photographer is arriving at 10:30 on Thursday." I nodded. Good. She watched me for a moment like she was taking my measure. Then she smiled slightly. "You run things like a professional," she said. "I am," I answered, and didn't say anything else. That night, I sat on the terrace alone with a cup of tea, listening to waves and the low hum of the pool system. The sky was clear. The stars didn't look real at first, like someone had turned the brightness up too high. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mom, 1 from Gavin, no voicemail. I didn't return them. I didn't feel angry. It was more like I'd stepped out of a room I'd been in too long and finally noticed how quiet it was outside. The next morning, the first arrivals started coming in. Aunt Tessa and Uncle Ray arrived early, just like she'd said. I watched their car roll up the drive and felt something in my chest loosen. Aunt Tessa got out with a wide-brimmed hat and a tote bag like she was arriving for a weekend at a friend's house, not an oceanfront estate. She looked around, then looked at me. "You did this," she said, not as a compliment, but as a statement of fact. I hugged her. I did. Uncle Ray whistled under his breath, slow and quiet. "Well, your folks are going to have feelings about this." "I'm sure they will," I said, and guided them inside. They didn't ask why my parents weren't there. They didn't need a story. They had lived the pattern too, just from the outside. They knew the way my mom made choices without saying she was making them. Over the next 2 days, the estate filled gradually. Kids ran up and down the stone paths, leaving damp footprints near the pool. Cousins claimed bedrooms with the efficiency of people who knew each other well. Someone put music on low in the kitchen, not to impress anyone, just because it felt right. The air smelled like salt and citrus and something warm coming from the oven. On Wednesday evening, we held a welcome dinner on the terrace. Not formal, not staged, just long tables, simple dishes, food that tasted fresh. The chef kept it light, island flavors without trying too hard, grilled fish, roasted vegetables, rice, fruit. When everyone had a glass in hand, Aunt Tessa lifted hers slightly toward me. "To Aaron," she said, "for being the kind of person who shows up." People clinked glasses. Someone laughed. A kid dropped a fork and immediately pretended it was on purpose. The sound was normal, human, safe. I didn't make a speech. I just nodded and let it happen. After dinner, while people drifted toward the pool and the living room, I stepped away to check the next day's schedule. The folder was on the counter, open to Thanksgiving. 9 a.m. breakfast, 10:30 photographer arrival, 11 paddleboards and beach walk. 1 lunch service begins 4:30 golden hour photos on the lawn, 6 dinner on the terrace. I checked each item like a quiet ritual, not because I needed control, but because I'd learned that good outcomes come from clear steps. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Gavin. "Happy Thanksgiving in advance. Mom asked me to check if you're doing okay by yourself. We can FaceTime tomorrow if you're lonely." I stared at the message for a moment. The word lonely felt almost comedic against the background noise of the house, the laughter in the next room, the sound of someone opening a fridge and asking where the sparkling water was. I didn't answer right away. I set the phone down on the counter, face down this time, and went back out to the terrace where Aunt Tessa was sitting with Uncle Ray, watching the ocean like it was a conversation. I took a seat with them and let the night stay quiet. Then I waited. Thanksgiving morning came in slowly, the way it does when you're near the ocean. The light was soft at first, then brighter, spreading across the terrace and the pool like someone had lifted a curtain. I woke early without an alarm. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could hear the faint sound of a dishwasher finishing its cycle. Somewhere down the hall, a child giggled in their sleep, then went quiet again. I made coffee and stepped outside. The chef and his assistant were already moving in the open-air kitchen, calm and efficient. Nothing frantic, just steady work. I caught the smell of roasted herbs, warm bread, and citrus. The table linens were laid out, pale and simple, with bowls of tropical flowers arranged like they belonged there. Behind me, the house started waking up, bare feet on tile, a sliding door opening. My cousin Priya yawning as she walked out with a mug, hair still damp from a shower. Uncle Ray in a cap, scanning the water as if the ocean might announce something important. It was loud in the right way, the living kind of loud. My phone buzzed while I was still holding my coffee. Another message from Gavin. Mom asked me to check if you're okay. We can FaceTime later if you're lonely. I read it once and didn't feel anything sharp. Just a flat kind of recognition. I typed back. Thanks. I'm busy today. Hope you all have a peaceful one. Then I put my phone in my pocket and went back to the terrace. At 10:20, Marisol walked over with her tablet. Photographer is 10 minutes out, she said. Great, I replied. We'll be ready. I didn't announce anything to the group. I didn't want people stiffening into poses. I wanted it to stay real. When the photographer arrived, he introduced himself quietly, like he knew we weren't filming a commercial. He started with candid shots, kids chasing each other by the palms, Aunt Tessa arranging flowers on the table without thinking about it, Priya laughing with my cousin Nolan as they argued gently about whether the beach walk should happen before lunch or after. I watched him work from a distance, not hovering. The camera clicked in small bursts, never interrupting the moment. At 11:15, the paddleboards went out. Teenagers took turns wobbling and falling, then climbing back up, laughing like they'd forgotten they were supposed to be cool. Uncle Ray stood on the terrace with a drink, giving unsolicited advice to no one in particular. This is not about strength, he called. It's balance and humility. Someone shouted back, We've got the humility part. I let myself smile. Around noon, I felt my phone vibrate again. Mom. This time it was a call. I looked at the screen for a second, then stepped away from the noise and answered as I walked toward the far end of the terrace. Hi, Mom. Her voice was bright in a way that always sounded like effort. Erin, sweetheart, are you sure you don't want to come by later for dessert? You know, just for pie. Dana made her pumpkin pie and the kids are excited. I watched Uncle Ray teaching one of the younger boys how to open a coconut with a tool Marisol had left by the counter. The boy's face was serious, tongue pressed against his teeth in concentration. Actually, I said calmly, I'm hosting lunch right now. Can I call you back? There was a pause so long I could hear my mother breathe. Hosting, she repeated slowly. Where? I didn't change my tone. Kauai. Another pause, then her voice lifted, higher and sharper. Kauai? Erin? Why are you in Hawaii? I kept my eyes on the ocean. I bought a place here, closed a few months ago. The silence that followed felt physical, like the air tightened. You bought a house, she said, as if she was repeating it to make it real. In Hawaii. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? I let the question sit for a beat, then answered honestly, without heat. Because you asked me to skip Thanksgiving, I said. And this wasn't for you. Her breath hitched. What do you mean it wasn't for us? Who is there with you? I glanced back at the terrace. Priya was holding a flower crown up to a child's head, trying to get it to sit right. Aunt Tessa was laughing with my cousin Nolan. Someone was pouring iced tea into glasses. The photographer was crouched low, catching a candid shot of two little kids whispering like they were plotting something. Family, I said simply. Which family? She pressed, and I could hear the edge now. Confusion mixed with something else. The aunts and uncles, I answered. The cousins, their kids. Her voice tightened. How many people? I didn't hesitate. 24. The silence was shorter this time, but heavier. That's everyone, she said, and the words came out like she hadn't meant to say them. I kept my tone even, almost gentle. Yes. What do you mean? Yes? She demanded, and now I could hear it fully. Not sadness, not guilt, something closer to panic. They always come here for Thanksgiving. Things change, I said. People go where they feel welcome. That's not fair, she said quickly, like if she said it fast enough it would become true. We just wanted a quiet holiday. I didn't argue. I didn't debate her definition of quiet. I didn't list my accomplishments or remind her of past slights. I didn't need to. I glanced at the time. The chef was plating the first course. Marisol had asked for a 10-minute warning before service. I need to go, I said. We're about to sit down. Aaron, my mother said, and her voice broke slightly on my name. Wait, just wait. Your father. I'll talk later, I replied, still calm. Enjoy your day. Then I ended the call. I stood there for a moment with the phone in my hand, listening to the ocean and the sound of laughter drifting over from the terrace. I felt clear, in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not victorious, just clear. When I walked back, Aunt Tessa looked at my face and didn't ask for details. She just reached out, squeezed my hand once, and said quietly, "Good." At 1, everyone took their seats at the long table. The chef brought the first dishes out: warm bread, roasted vegetables, a clean, simple salad with citrus. Nothing heavy yet, just the beginning. The photographer moved around the edges like a shadow, capturing faces mid-laugh, hands reaching for serving bowls, kids leaning into their parents. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, twice, then again. I didn't check it. I lifted my glass, waited for the chatter to settle naturally, and said only this: to being together. Glasses clinked. People smiled. The ocean kept rolling in and out like it had its own schedule. And somewhere back home, I knew my mother was staring at her phone, trying to decide what to do next. The next morning, the house woke up slowly. Sunlight hit the kitchen floor in clean rectangles. Someone had started coffee. Kids were already outside, barefoot on warm stone, chasing each other along the edge of the pool like the day belonged to them. I walked out with my mug and sat near the far end of the terrace, where I could see the Pacific Ocean without having to talk. Not because I was avoiding anyone, just because I like quiet in the morning. My phone was full of notifications. The photographer had delivered a first batch of images overnight, not edited into anything dramatic, just clean, honest photos. People laughing mid-sentence, kids with flower crowns slightly crooked. Aunt Tessa leaning in close to one of the cousins with a look that said, "I'm listening." The long table on the terrace with the ocean behind it, no filters needed. And once one person posted, the rest followed. Aunt Tessa shared an album on Instagram with a simple caption about gratitude and family. Cousin Priya posted a short clip of the cooking class and the kids running around with sticky hands from pineapple. Uncle Ray posted a photo of the group at sunset and wrote, "Best Thanksgiving in years." The comments came fast. Some were from friends and coworkers, some from relatives who could not attend. And then I started seeing names I recognized from my parents' world, the people who usually only show up when Gavin's family is involved. Beautiful. Where is this? How did you all end up there? Why weren't your parents there? I didn't reply to any of it. I watched the posts the way you watch weather roll in, not with panic, just awareness. By late morning, my phone rang. Gavin. I let it ring twice, finished my sip of coffee, then answered calmly. "Hey." His voice was tight, like he was trying to keep it controlled and failing. "What is going on?" "I'm having a good week," I said. "What's going on with you?" A pause, a breath. "Mom is getting calls. Everyone is asking questions." I figured they would. "Why didn't you tell us you bought a house?" he said, and the words came out sharper than he probably intended. "I didn't hide it from you," I replied. "I just didn't announce it." "That's the same thing." "It's not," I said. "If you wanted to know, you could have asked how I was doing without it being a check-in on Mom's behalf." He went quiet. In the background, I could hear a child calling for him, then another voice, his wife, trying to manage it. Gavin lowered his voice. "Mom is embarrassed." I held my tone steady. "She'll be okay." "You did this to make a point," he said. "I did this to host my family," I replied. "Those are different things." He tried again, like he was looking for a lever. "Dad says this is disrespectful." I looked across the terrace. Aunt Tessa was cutting fruit for a kid who had wandered too close to the kitchen. Marisol was checking something on her tablet with the chef. Cousin Nolan was loading beach towels into a bag like he'd done it 100 times. I didn't insult anyone, I said. I didn't post anything about them. I didn't name them. I just lived my life. Gavin exhaled through his nose, short and frustrated. Mom wants to talk to you. Like, really talk. Okay, I said. Set a time. He seemed thrown off by that, like he expected me to refuse. Now. Not now, I answered, still calm. Today at 4, Hawaii time. Put both of them on the call. I'll step away and listen. If people start talking over each other, I'm hanging up. He was quiet again, then said, Fine. Text me the time, I replied. I have to go. I ended the call and left my phone on the counter inside, face up, where I could see it if it rang again. Then I went back outside. I spent the rest of the day the way I intended to. We did a short boat trip. Nothing fancy, just enough time on the water to see turtles near the surface and let the kids point and shout like they were spotting something rare. We stopped for shave ice. We came back with sun on our shoulders and salt in our hair. It felt normal in the best way. At 3:58, I washed my hands, dried them, and walked into the quiet sitting room off the main hall. The one place in the house where you could close a door and hear almost nothing. The call came at exactly 4. I answered and put it on speaker, then sat with my hands folded on my lap. My mother spoke first. Aaron. My father was there too. I could hear his breathing. He didn't start with anger. He started with control, the same way he always does. Your mother and I have been talking, he said. We need to understand what you're doing. I waited a beat before answering. I'm listening. My mother jumped in, words rushing like she was trying to patch something before it tore. Honey, you didn't have to do all this. You could have just come home. We were keeping it small. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I kept my voice even. You told me not to come. We said it would be better if you skipped this year, she corrected quickly, like wording could change the impact. My father spoke again. This looks bad. People are calling us, asking why we weren't invited. I didn't argue with the premise. I didn't apologize either. I hosted Thanksgiving, I said. The extended family came. It went well. My mother's voice tightened. You knew they'd post. You knew everyone would see. I paused, then answered simply. I assumed they would share photos of their holiday, yes. My father's tone sharpened. You should have told us. This kind of thing affects the whole family. It doesn't affect the whole family, I said. It affects your reputation. Silence. I let it stay silent. I didn't fill the space. I've learned that if you give people quiet, they show you what they actually mean. My mother spoke again, softer now, trying a different approach. Aaron, be reasonable. We can fix this. We can explain it. We can tell people you had work, or you were sick. I'm not doing that, I replied. Why not? She asked, and her voice cracked on the word. Because it isn't true, I said. And I'm not going to shrink my life so you can feel comfortable. My father made a short sound, almost a scoff. So this is punishment. I kept my tone level. No, this is my boundary. My mother sounded angry now, but it was the kind of anger that comes from losing control. You could have invited us. I could have, I said, but you asked me to stay away. I took you at your word. My father leaned in, voice lower. You're acting like a child. I didn't react to the insult. I didn't mirror it back. I'm acting like an adult who heard a clear message, I said. You chose how you wanted to spend the holiday. I chose how I wanted to spend mine. My mother's voice rose. But the whole family came to you, all of them. Do you understand what that looks like? Yes, I said. It looks like they wanted to be where they felt welcome. Another long pause. Then my father changed direction, the way he does when he wants leverage. If you want things to go back to normal, You'll take those photos down. Tell your aunt to stop posting. I can't control what other adults post, I replied, and I'm not going to ask them to hide their joy. My mother sounded smaller now. Aaron, please. Your father is upset. I'm upset. Christmas is coming. Let's just reset. I exhaled slowly, not dramatic, just steady. Here are my terms, I said. If you want to be included in my holidays moving forward, you treat me like a full member of this family. No conditions based on Gavin's schedule, no last-minute invitations, no conversations where my work is dismissed and his is celebrated. My father started to speak, but I held my ground. And, I continued, if you interrupt, guilt, or threaten, I will end the call. Then we will try again another time. My mother whispered my name like she was trying to soften me. I did not soften. I did not harden either. I stayed where I was. My father finally asked, "Are you saying we're not invited to anything now?" "I'm saying invitations are not automatic anymore," I replied. "They're earned by behavior." The line went quiet again. I could hear my mother breathing, uneven. My father made a small sound like he was biting back words. For the first time in my life, neither of them had a clean move. I looked at the clock on the wall, then back at my hands. "I'm going to hang up now," I said. "Not because I'm angry, because this conversation isn't productive anymore. If you want to talk again, text me a time and an agenda. If you want to argue, don't." My mother said, "Aaron, wait." My father said my name once, sharp. I ended the call anyway. I set the phone down on the table, stood up, and opened the door. Outside, I could hear the family laughing near the pool, someone calling for more towels, the sound of a suitcase zipper as kids pulled out swimsuits again. I stepped back into it like it was the only real thing. Then my phone buzzed with a new text, and I didn't pick it up right away. The text sat on my screen like it had weight. "Your father and I want to come for Christmas. We'll keep it simple. Let us know what flights to book." I stared at it for a moment without responding. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to say only what I meant. I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked back out to the terrace. The air was warm, the kind that makes you forget winter exists anywhere else. Someone had turned music on low again. Kids were drying off in the sun, wrapped in towels like capes. Marisol was speaking softly with the chef, making notes. The day had that post-holiday softness to it, like the world had slowed down and decided to be kind for a minute. Later that night, when the house finally quieted, I went back into the sitting room and opened my laptop. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was just done being vague. I pulled up my notes the way I would for a client meeting, and I built a clean timeline. Dates, messages, what was said, what I did, what I didn't do. Not as a speech, as a record. I have learned that when people want to rewrite reality, you don't fight them with emotion. You hand them a list. I created a single document titled Holiday Communication. Then I wrote, Nov 2. Mom texted asking me to skip Thanksgiving. Nov 2. I replied calmly, confirming. Nov 9. Mom texted, maybe Christmas if Gavin's schedule permits. Nov 16. Mom called, asked if I was working, implied my plans were secondary. Nov 23. Gavin texted about checking on me by myself. Nov 23. Mom called again. I told her I was hosting in Kauai. Nov 24. Gavin called after photos went public. Nov 24. Group call with Mom and Dad, where Dad asked me to stop photos and control other adults. I didn't add commentary. I didn't write how it felt. I didn't need to. The pattern was the point. Then I attached one supporting file, a screenshot of Mom's original text telling me to skip Thanksgiving. I saved the document, exported it as a PDF, and left it in a folder with the closing papers I already had. Not because I planned to send it to anyone right away, but because I wanted it to exist. The next morning, the extended family started leaving in waves, the way big gatherings always end, with hugs at the door and kids suddenly tired and quiet in car seats. Aunt Tessa was one of the last to go. She hugged me in the driveway, held on for an extra second, then looked me in the eye. "You're going to get pushback," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "Do not let them turn this into a story where you're the problem." "I won't," I said. She nodded, like that was the only answer she needed. When the last car was gone, the estate felt larger, not lonely, just quieter. I walked through the rooms and picked up little traces of the week, a forgotten hair tie on a side table, a child's toy left by the couch, a half-finished bottle of sunscreen on the counter. I cleaned slowly, the way you clean when you're not rushing. I stacked the extra chairs, I folded table linens, I rinsed glasses and watched water run clear. Then I sat down with my phone again. There were new messages, more polite than before, more careful. From my mother, "We'd like to talk again. Please." From my father, "We should discuss Christmas like adults." From Gavin, "This is getting messy. Mom's really upset." The last one was the most honest, not because he cared about my feelings, but because he was admitting something had shifted in the family system and he didn't like not controlling it. I answered none of them immediately. Instead, I opened the group chat with my extended family and scrolled through the posts from the week. Not for the photos, for the comments. People had written things my parents were now being forced to see, not because I demanded it, but because the truth has a way of showing up when other people witness it. "So proud of you, Aaron. You always deserved more support. This looks like real family. Thank you for bringing us together." Then I did something I hadn't planned to do until later. I created a separate message thread with just my parents. No group, no audience, no opportunity for them to perform. I wrote, "I'm willing to talk about Christmas, but first, I need clarity. I need you both to acknowledge that you asked me to skip Thanksgiving. I need you to acknowledge that you made holiday access conditional on Gavin, and I need you to agree that my life is not something you get to manage for appearances. If you can't do that, we're not planning anything together right now. If you can, we can discuss a visit under clear rules." Then I added 3 rules, written the way I write project constraints. Visits are by invitation only, with confirmed dates and times. No last-minute changes, no guilt language, no rewriting the past. If it happens, the visit ends. Gavin is not the decision-maker for my relationship with you. I read it once, then sent it. After that, I put my phone down and didn't touch it for an hour. When I picked it up again, there were 2 missed calls from my mother and 1 from my father. Then a message from my father that was shorter than anything he'd ever sent me. "We did ask you to skip Thanksgiving." I stared at that line for a long moment. Not because it was warm. It wasn't. It was bare. But it was real. Then another message came in from my mother. I didn't realize how it sounded. "I'm sorry. I thought we were doing what was easiest. I see now it wasn't fair." I let my breath out slowly. That was more than I expected. Not full accountability, but a crack in the wall. Then Gavin sent a message. "Mom is getting asked by everyone why she wasn't there. She's embarrassed. Dad's mad. I don't know why you're doing this." I looked at it, then typed back 1 line. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm living my life." He didn't respond. That afternoon, Marisol stopped by the terrace while I was sorting paperwork. She asked if we wanted to plan a New Year's week for the family. She said it casually, like it was a normal next step. I told her I'd think about it. After she left, I opened my laptop again. Not the holiday document this time. A new tab. Winter planning. I pulled up a property file I'd been holding for months, the one I hadn't shared with anyone except my attorney and my lender. It was a chalet I'd purchased earlier in the year, up in the Swiss Alps near Zermatt. Quiet, clean, the kind of place where people naturally lower their voices. I hadn't bought it to impress anyone. I bought it because I liked the idea of having a winter home that felt like order. I opened the calendar and started setting dates. Step 1, confirm availability with the chalet manager. Step 2, outline travel windows. Step 3. Invite the people who actually show up. My phone buzzed again while I was typing. From my mother. We can talk when you're ready. We want to be included. We'll do it your way. I didn't answer right away. I reread it twice, not for reassurance, but for accuracy. Then I saved the winter plan, closed the laptop, and walked out to the edge of the terrace. The ocean was calm. The sky was starting to soften into late afternoon light. I stood there and let it be quiet, because the truth was already out now, not as a fight, as a timeline, as receipts, as other people witnessing what I'd built. And once that happens, consequences don't need drama. They just arrive. My phone buzzed one more time, and when I looked down, it was a new message with a single question from my father. Are we invited to Switzerland? I didn't answer my father's question right away. I read it once, then again, the way you reread something when you want to be sure you're not adding meaning that isn't there. Are we invited to Switzerland? It was the first time he'd asked me anything that sounded like I had control over a door he wanted to walk through. I set the phone down on the counter and made tea. The kettle clicked on, the same steady sound as always. I rinsed a mug, dried my hands on a towel, and waited for the water to boil. Nothing in the house needed my attention. The week had ended. The guests had gone. The staff had returned to their normal routine. The terrace was clean. When the tea was ready, I carried it outside and sat in the quiet. The ocean was calm. The wind was light. Everything looked exactly the same as it had when my mom told me to skip Thanksgiving, and yet it felt different now. Not because they were suddenly kind, because I'd stopped negotiating my place in the family. After a few minutes, I picked up my phone and opened a fresh note. I wrote the response I actually meant. Not the response that would soothe them, not the response that would punish them, just the one that matched reality. Then I copied it into the message thread with my parents. Dad, I'm planning Christmas in Switzerland for the people who have shown up for me consistently. Right now, that doesn't include you, Mom, or Gavin. If you want that to change, we can do it in order, not in a rush. Step 1. We meet somewhere neutral in the spring, just the three of us, and we talk without blaming or rewriting. Step 2. You show me for 6 months that holidays and family time are not conditional on Gavin's schedule. Step 3. If that happens, we try a smaller visit next year, with clear dates and expectations. I won't argue about this. I'm not angry. I'm just not available for the old pattern. I sent it and put the phone down. My hands stayed steady. My chest felt open, not tight. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The first response came from my mother. This hurts. But I understand what you're saying. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't full accountability. But it was an acknowledgement that she'd heard me. Then my father replied. We will talk in the spring. Short. Controlled. But still, a shift. He didn't demand. He didn't threaten. He didn't try to call my bluff. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't allowed myself to notice before. They weren't entitled to me. They were just used to me. That evening, I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I wiped down counters, folded towels, stacked the last few printed itineraries into a folder and slid it into the drawer with the closing papers and the holiday timeline. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was building a system, one that protected my peace. The next morning, I took a walk along the shoreline alone. The sand was cool under my feet. The air smelled like salt and sun-warmed stone. I watched a couple of early surfers wade in, quiet and focused, and I let the sound of the waves flatten everything inside me that didn't need to be carried. Back at the house, I opened my laptop and finalized the Switzerland plan. Not for revenge, not for an announcement, just because it was the next right step. I sent the first invitations to Aunt Tessa, Uncle Ray, Priya, Nolan, and the cousins who had shown up without conditions. I kept it simple. Dates, travel windows, a few options, no speeches. Within an hour, the replies came in. We're in. Tell me what to book. I can bring the kids' winter gear. Thank you for doing this. I read them, then closed the laptop. Later that afternoon, Marisol mentioned that one of the neighbors had asked if the house would be available for a charity event in the new year. I declined politely, not because I didn't like the idea, because I was learning that every yes needed to be chosen, not defaulted. That night, I got one more message from Gavin. So you're really doing this. I looked at the screen, thought about it, and wrote back one line. I'm really living. He didn't respond after that. A few days later, I flew back to Seattle. My apartment smelled faintly like clean laundry and the lemon soap I use in the kitchen. I unpacked, put everything away, and went back to work. Clients, drawings, emails, the normal shape of my life. But something had changed underneath it. I stopped waiting for my parents to act like I mattered. And in that space, I noticed other things. A friend from my licensing days had called while I was away. She left a voicemail I hadn't listened to yet. She said her younger sister was being pushed out of their family holidays in the same quiet way, and she didn't know what to do about it. I saved the message for later, because I knew what I would tell her, calmly, in steps. And if you've made it this far, I'd like you to stay with me. Tap like and subscribe if stories like this help you feel a little more steady. Then tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'll be sharing 2 popular stories next, and I think you'll recognize the patterns in them too.